Good afternoon and welcome to the Licensing Committee meeting, 20th of January 2025. Now, I'm aware there are members that are likely to come in very shortly, but we will make a start. So welcome everyone to some housekeeping. Mobile phones to be switched off or onto silent, please. There are no planned fire drills this afternoon. If you do hear the fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station. Please don't use the lifts in the event of an emergency, and please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it's safe to do so by a member of the staff. Thank you. We don't have any apologies. I understand Councillor Bacon may be slightly late, but we have received no other apologies. And I'll just make a point of welcoming Councillor Ed Blake to the committee, to the licensing committee, who replaces Councillor Susie Ellis. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting from the 10th of June 2024, pages 5 to 8 on your pack. Are there any comments on the minutes? No comments? Can I have a proposer? Is that a comment, Paul? Okay, thank you. Propose Councillor Fuller, and a seconder, Councillor Quirk. Declarations of interest. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, declaration of interest, specifically within item 6B. I'm Vice Chair of Newport Business Association. As you can see, they're rather active in the forthcoming policy. So it's a non-pecuniary interest, but I might just lead the committee to, I might not get myself involved, just for the sake of clarity there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 4, public question times. I understand there are no public questions at this point. Number 5, urgent business. I understand there is no urgent business. Okay. Item 6, report of the Strategic Director of Community Services. And 6A, and I'll hand you over to Kevin Winchcombe, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming along to the licensing hearing today. I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of the report that's in front of you in relation to the Gambling Act policy. As you all read in the report, that every local authority under Section 349 of the Gambling Act 2005 must have a statement of licensing policy which runs for 3 years. On that note, you will note at paragraph 3 and paragraph 23, option 1, that it says that the policy will be in place to 2030. In fact, that's a typo. It should be 2028. But we can clarify that further as we go on. The current policy, there is a current policy in place that expires this January, but the existing policy will remain in place until such time this policy is approved. You will see in the report that a consultation was undertaken, public consultation undertaken between the 4th of January and the 4th of December and the 1st of January. during which 3 replies were received, one from the fire service, one from environmental health, one from the fire services acknowledged it. Environmental health raised a couple of typos within the proposed policy for consultation, and a company called Gosh Shawks, which responded on behalf of the Better Gambling Council, they recommended the removal of a couple of considerations, which have now been removed from the policy. You will see that going through the policy. We feel, like officers feel, that the policy is fit for purpose, and the report seeks for the licensing committee to consider the proposal and then make recommendation to full council for approval later on in March. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Winchcombe. At this point, I'd like to open it up to members if there are any questions or observations. Councillor Jarman.
I just have one which relates to the fees, and I noticed that if somebody makes an application and we do all the work for the application, at the end of that's not successful, the 25% that they've paid, despite the fact we've actually done all the work to get to that point, is not returned to them.
We're just going to check that, but yeah, we believe so. That all of the fees are set out in the Act. We'll just check to see exactly what it says within the Act in relation to fees for you, Councillor.
That was my question. So is it something that we are mandated to do by the Act, or something that we choose to refund them, having done the work and them not being successful? It's not ultimately necessarily our fault that it's not successful. You know, it's the application itself which has not been successful. And on the basis that we've done all the work, it would seem perverse for us to have incurred the cost and them to have no liability for that cost.
Mrs. Ball looks up for that and confirms that. What I will say is that the fees are made up in parts. It's not a sole fee, so there will be a fee that covers the consultation, then there will be a fee that then goes on for us to manage the premises thereafter the application's been granted. If that makes sense of why we would not then claim the rest of the fee, because we haven't done the work that's associated with that fee. Does that make sense? So 25% of it would result in us managing the application.
I'd assume the 25% was what the work that was done to get us to the point of considering considering the application. So the disparity only occurred if it was then rejected. So obviously the work that's done to get to the point of considering it must be a very large percentage of the work. I mean, we're here as a committee. If we're considering an application, it's not successful, the work of getting it to this committee, I would imagine, would be like 90% of the effort normally involved. Notifying them of the success or otherwise of the outcome of that would seem a relatively minor part.
I'll just pause while we get an answer.
Not that I'm money grabbing, it's in the state of other finances. I think every one of these that we can deal with is good.
Reset.
While you're looking that up, there's a question from Councillor Jones-Evans.
Yep.
You want to take that now?
Yes, yeah.
We was an extra question, Mr. Winchcombe, was actually for you, Chair. I was just going to propose that because there's no questions on altering the content of the policy, that we approve it and let it go forth to full council.
That's fair comment. Let me just get the answer before we proceed, if that's okay.
I propose that we look for a seconder. Numbers out.
25. Do we actually give it back, or is the whole fee payable on application?
Fees. Charge to facilitate cost
Could I propose that we don't incur the officers a lot of time here, that perhaps they could deal with it afterwards. There's no necessity, I think, to deal with it real time during the meeting. I wouldn't want to take everybody's time up with it.
So
If
you'll
we
be
could just-
happy, you'll
Yes,
be
and
happy
I'm
with
very
a
happy to
response at the
second
end.
Councillor Jones Evans' suggestion.
Thanks, Councillor Jarman. We will get back to you and just check on that.
Good.
It's probably a little bit thing. We probably need to go in a little more detail around the actual legalities of it. But I will ensure that we get back to you in relation to the 25%.
And if I could just ask that the answer is copied to all the committee.
Yes, most definitely, Councillor Jarman.
Okay, the recommendation is there. We have a proposer. That the licensing committee recommends that full council approve and adopt the revised gambling licensing policy 2025 to 2028 as amended at Appendix 1. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 6B, approval of the street furniture and pavement licensing policy 2024 to 2029. And I will hand that over again to Mr. Winchcombe.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I'll just give you a very brief overview of the report that is in front of you in relation to two separate regulatory regimes, one for the licensing of under the Highways Act and also the one for licensing under the Business and Planning Act. The paper sets out both of those quite clearly. One is in relation to premises that are serving food, and the Highways Act relates to the one which is not related to food sales, food or drink sales. As you will remember, back in the meeting back in June, we discussed this at length around the licensing of A-boards. It was felt at that time that the committee wished to include the licensing of all A-boards and not just A-boards over 1.5 metre high. And the recommendations of that committee, as you see in the minutes at the beginning of this meeting, that it was asked that we would include licensing all A-boards. Now, on discussion with the legal department, it was felt, because it was quite a fundamental change and there was no evidence to support this change, that a consultation should be undertaken. Now, in consultation with the chair of licensing, Councillor Beston, and the cabinet member, Councillor Lucioni, it was determined that an additional consultation would need to be undertaken with all of the business associations on the island to understand their views on that particular recommendations from this committee. We undertook that consultation process, and as you will see in the report, that we had 67 replies, which was greater than the number we had from the original public consultation in relation to the licence and A-boards. Now, you will see in front of you, there's an additional document we circulated today, which shows you all of the 67 responses. You will also see that at the top of that list, and the one included in the bundle, 3 that has come from the business associations and 1 from another organisation which is related to businesses. 3 business associations and the Vector Lodge of Oddfellows. It's quite clear in there that that the businesses and business associations, probably quite understandably, do not want to pay any additional fees or undertake any future licensing processes. It's quite clear within that those comments that's come back. What many of them have requested, that although they aren't licensed as effect, they are effectively managed to ensure they're placed on the highway in a safe and proper place. Now, in the report, at section or paragraph, I didn't have to find it, so I thought I wrote it down. I do apologise. There is a paragraph from Island Roads which explains how the boards are managed at the moment. So it's at section 40, it's at paragraph 48. And it quite clearly states how Island Roads stewards manage A boards which are in a location which is causing blockages or blocking the pedestrian right of way, or in fact obscuring corners where perhaps vehicles are trying to turn around and blocks the views of people. So that is already in place and is effective. So you have in front of you two policies, one which includes A boards to be licensed, which is Appendix 2, and the one that we brought to the committee back in June last year, which just refers to the license and A boards at 1.5 metres and above. Now, based on the consultation, the officers have produced the report that recommends approval and take this forward to full council of not including A boards in the licensing regime as originally requested back in June by this committee. I think that clearly explains where we are. So I'm happy to take any further questions on this recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Winchcombe. I'll open that up. So Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Chairman. What I would like to ask, although we may not charge for A boards in the future, is there any limitation on the number of A boards that can be in a set area?
I'll try and attempt to answer that, Chair, because it's not for the licensing department to manage the footways or the highways. That is down to Island Roads.
Sure.
I can only assume from the paragraph that was supplied by Island Roads that they would look at that generally and ensure that there is a safe passage of people along that pavement or roadway. Sorry, Councillor Ward, I'm not able to exactly answer that.
I'll have to word with my district.
Thank you, Councillor. Turn your microphone on, please. Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you. So yeah, I get the A boards, I get safety and all of that. I completely disagree that we should be charging anything for it. I just think business is struggling so much at the moment, and that any additional cost given them to something that will promote their business, I just think is wrong. You know, and there isn't a business owner that is in the high street or anything. Their business rates are absolutely crippling. They get charged business rate before they've even moved into the premises, which is just really worrying. And I think anything we can do to support businesses at this really, really difficult time. So yes, I get everything about it. Councillor Evans showed me a really nice comment, which I thought was really funny about us all being capitalist. I sort of sign up to a bit of capitalism, but actually not when it comes down to affecting businesses at the moment in such a difficult period. So I agree with all of it, but I don't think we should be charging. I think we should give businesses a bit more of a chance.
Thank you, Councillor Mosdale. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, I note that this particular policy, unlike the previous one, is for 5 years until 2030. Just checking that that also is not a typo. And it
No, you're quite right, Councillor Andre. The legislation relating to the Gambling Act requires it only to be 3 years, where we choose to, in the recommendation is for this to be a 5-year policy.
Thank you. And I have another question following on from Councillor Mosdale. I also note that if we do approve this today, it's active from the 1st of January. So presumably, not only will any businesses be charged, but will it be backdated, which is almost like a double whammy to the 1st of January?
I think the intention would be, Councillor Andre, is that the existing policy is very similar to this. We do charge for both regimes, but not A boards, and it would need to go to full council for approval. So if it was implemented, there would be a delay, but would have to be a delay because it's inevitable that it can't be put in place until full council approve it.
So would there be a back payment, or would it go from when it's ratified by full council?
I think there would be, I think I'm in there, I may have suggested, or we do need to look at a sort of a feed-in period, because there's a lot of A boards out there. If we were to implement it, we wouldn't be able to enforce every single A board from such and date. So we'd have to look at an implementation plan to accommodate it.
Sorry, Chair. And would that be part of the further paper that might come to full council. That would be included.
I would
A
include
phased,
that.
a
As a
phased
phased
approach.
programme, if you wanted to go down the route of Appendix 2, then we would have to put a phased programme in place.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. With the able, I totally agree with Councillor Mosdale's point that this is, and it's come across as this is in the consultation responses. This is being seen as unnecessary tax. Of course, this is not a Isle of Wight Council income. This is a licence income this is separate to the council's funds. And I think that needs to be made aware to people that it isn't an Isle of Wight Council tax as such. It's a licensing fee that goes towards the cost of running licensing. But I think what this has obviously come about from is it's some nuisance boards. And when in a previous life used to have a shop in Newport, the nuisance boards weren't the ones that were in front of the shops directly that they were advertising. They were ones that were maybe off the high street, looking to attract customers more towards their way. Of course, these shops have a heavily reduced rent and rates because of their position. But the other thing with their boards was that they would be left, obviously, from 8:59 just before they opened until 5:01 just after they closed, and they may start off putting them in a half sensible position, but during the day someone might have come through with something, and these boards end up in the middle of the pavement or in the middle of the road, and then causing a nuisance, and that's obviously led down the line to this coming in front of us as a council. So maybe the way forward is to bring in legislation or around where boards can be positioned in relation to your business in order so then they can be effectively managed better.
I think that's set out in the policy without a doubt. 1.5 metres.
In terms of relocation to your business rather than just the size of them. So as I say, it's the nuisance ones were positioned on junctions, either road or pedestrian junctions, away from the business they're advertising, in order to draw people down towards there. The ones that weren't so much of an issue, which are I would say probably 99% of the A boards in existence, are the ones in front of the business they're advertising. I said the nuisance ones, in my experience, were the ones far away, as much as 150 metres away from the shop they're advertising.
Good point. Did you want to pick up on that, Mr. Mitchell?
I'm quite happy to. I think what Councillor Blake is just trying to say, that no able can be placed X number of metres away from the front door of a premises. That's what you're basically saying, aren't you? As a condition. The policy is, you as a licensing committee is quite well within your rights to make that as a recommendation to be included within the policy for full council to approve. That's quite within your remit here today. With regards to the fees, Councillor Blake is quite right that the licensing fees are ring-fenced for the licensing service only and cannot be used for any other purpose other than for what it's been collected for.
I'll just make a comment. It's a good point. But any recommendations to this current policy will obviously delay that, so that the council may be open.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate I'm late to this, and that it probably so I should have raised before previous to this. But so if maybe we should make a note for 5 years' time.
It may be something we need to consider later, and I think the chairman is quite right that it may negate another as a consultation with those people if we were to go down that route, because it's quite a substantial fundamental change to the policy, which you guys need to consider. Thank you.
Thank you for your point. Thank you. Councillor Jarman.
Chair, I think Councillor Jones-Evans indicated before me.
Councillor Jones-Evans, quite happy to
Thank
take.
you, Councillor Jarman. So I think the result of our last meeting in June, we had this discussion about the fees. It got completely lost in translation. At no point did one member of this committee say we think £225 per year is the right way to go forward if we're going to make ABLEs licensable at all. In fact, I think that during the meeting I brought up I think it was Liverpool that had a Yes, it was about, it was a 3-year, like 3-year license they have in Liverpool City Council, and it was worked out, I don't know how much it was now, 80 quid a year, whatever, I can't remember now. I just said it to Mr. Winchcombe, and I understand why Mr. Winchcombe has put forward this fee, because that's the standard fee that we have, and that's all fine. But just please understand, because they've got completely lost in translation. Not one of us said this is a great way forward. What we're trying to do is trying to make our streets a little bit safer. And it saddens me, but also I'm glad it's here that, on the last page, we actually have heard from someone who is who finds these a real hazard, any able a real hazard, because that's the feedback I get as a Newport Central member of past 16, 17 years. And they are an issue for people. They go around a corner and they just go straight into an A-board. And where that hell that come from? When you go into St Thomas Square, for instance, come down Pyle Street, my gosh, you've got to take your life in hands. There's some big ones around there. So we're on a journey here, and I know I was probably leading the charge on this last meeting. That's only because of the experience I have as a central Newport business. So it was kind of frustrating when all the press went out saying, "Oh, License Committee, you want to charge us this? You want to make," because that wasn't the point of the meeting at all. That wasn't the point what we came out of. But so it seems like we can't do a license for more than 3 years. It's going to be 1 year only, and standard charge has to be 225. That's what I'm getting from what came out of it, and that is a burden, obviously. So I'm going to actually abstain on this vote, because it's such a difficult emotive subject, and it's about finding that balance. But I think if we can have some strict, have the guidelines out there for people, so if we can use our environment officers to get the message out, about where you can put it safely, or we're going to have to just use it on activate island roads, which is going to cause more frustration, and areas for people are going to be butting up against each other. Anyway, that's it from me. I just wanted to put the record straight, because it all went completely, it was all wrong, basically, the way it came out.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Jones-Evans. Councillor Jarman.
Being perhaps rather nerdy about it, I did a couple of driving and walking surveys while I was going backwards and forwards to places, counting the number of A-frames that I could see. The biggest purveyor of A-frames was actually Island Roads themselves. The second biggest purveyor of A-frames, sticking them on pavements and footpaths, and indeed on the public highway, was utility companies. So I know there are some of the shops, but the current delimitation, the definition of an A-board, doesn't distinguish between who's providing it. So it does trouble me a little bit. I'm looking over to my left here at Kevin, etc., and Andrea, but we do use the phrase, but without limiting it to those in front of shops or those in front of whatever the event might be. It is simply all A-frames, which is a very broad category. So I'll just point that out for later consideration, that we might want to think about that next time. The other issue here, which is a general question, is if we forego, which is the proposal now, for whatever reason it arose, the fee, what is the total amount of estimated fees that we would be foregoing? I.e., if we would go ahead with this, what do we get? And if we don't go ahead with it, what do we lose?
Of course,
Very simply.
thank you. We'll refer that. Thank you.
I think the in answer to that is, I don't have that answer, Councillor Jarman, because I don't know how many A-boards there are out there. As I said, currently we do not manage A-boards. We don't have that data. And we do know there are a number of A-boards out there in each of the towns, but the exact number I'm aware of. Councillor Jones-Evans just suggested, and we're trying to find the exact what we actually said, because I'm not 100% sure we actually included the fees within the consultation. I think they may have been picked up off of our website as the existing fees. It was just solely around the licensing. So it's important to understand that if we're going to license the A-boards, what the fee would have been, I don't know, because we haven't gone through that process. So how license fees are set is that officers have to demonstrate and then calculate how much that process costs us to administer, from the application through to the determination through to the consultation and through to the enforcement thereafter. And at the moment, we haven't had those conversations with potentially Island Roads, what that looks like, around any costs, additional costs that they may incur. So it was more around whether these should be licensed. So I'm waffling a bit, Councillor John, and I apologise, but at the end of the day, I don't have that figure available.
Could I just interject very quickly? I think that figure of 225 came up during the committee meeting. I
Yes.
think that was what you
So
said. because
currently,
that's what a table is.
so-
Thank you,
so-
Chair, as well.
currently the pavement licensing, which is under the Highways Act, for any premises where food or drink isn't being sold, is £225. A pavement license for the pavement license, which is under the Planning Act, which is for premises that have food and drink, is cheaper because the Act allows it to be. Because the Act says there is a maximum that you can charge, which is therefore that's why it's a little bit cheaper, and I think it's £150.
Around the text, by the way,
Yeah.
we did mention cost.
Okay, and the cost, the current fees were included in the consultation. So just to confirm that. But there are two separate regimes, and the planning, the Business and Planning Act is an act to regenerate the economy, to assist those businesses with additional opportunities to sell food and drink outside their premises. But I don't have the overall cost of what the additional income would be.
Thank you. Councillor John, you have a supplementary then?
Yeah, so I'm not surprised. I suspect, as Councillor Jones-Evans just pointed out as well, that if we did charge 225, they would all disappear within a couple of hours. And the only ones we'd be left to charge would be utility companies and Island Roads. Probably wouldn't want to get into that game. So I think we're spiraling into a situation that is not productive in any way here. And I'd suggest we just drop the whole concept of the 225, or indeed of any fee at all in this. Seems to be unfounded.
In relation to what Councillor Jones-Evans said around position of them, the policy is quite explanatory around what distances need to be between between the item and the edge of the footpath to enable safe patches of people through, and also from the roadside inwards. There's a distance that has to be positioned from the roadside inwards, not just from the shop outwards, also from the road inwards, so vehicles cannot collide with them as they drive past. That is quite clear, and it is set out in both policies exactly the same, which is under the recommendations from the Highways and Island Roads Authority. And there are a number of roads and streets on the island where A-boards and other items just simply cannot be fitted because the pavements just aren't wide enough.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Quirk.
I said at the last meeting that I was much more acutely aware of obstructions on the pavement and the effect that anyone who's partially sighted or unsighted suffers from them. But actually licensing them makes absolutely no difference to the obstruction that's there and to the difficulty of being aware of them. But the point that was raised by Councillor Mosdale, businesses on the island are struggling. Spoken to quite a few businesses in Shanklin, and it's really confusing because part of the pavement has been adopted by the council and parts of it haven't been adopted by the council. And so you're only talking about council bits of land because the bits that someone has actually kept what used to be part of the curtilage of their shop with their shop can do what they like with it. So it's be difficult to enforce, and to the detriment of our high streets. Our high streets are suffering, and we penalise them with parking regulations and parking charges. And I think we need to be sympathetic to the needs of the high street. And I do think, although I did raise issues of the concerns over A-boards, I think on balance, we should allow them, and I don't think we should be charging for them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Redruth.
Thank you very much, Chair. So on the topic of the fee, what I'm hearing from you is that there is regulation to keep some fees lower, but this wouldn't apply to A boards. So it would be a case of however much it costs you to implement that process, which would also include enforcement, which you've also said would be a huge amount of work to cover that. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, Councillor Redruth, you're quite right within that. There's two different licensing regimes. A boards or advertising is categorically excluded from the Business and Planning Act, which is the cheaper one. It quite clearly states that that cannot be included within that process. It would have to be issued under Section 115 of the Highways Act.
And of course, you need to cover your costs and the
Yep.
staff time in order to administer it and also to do the enforcement as well, which would be a challenge because there's so much to enforce across the island. So we could be looking at a fee that would actually be higher than that, possibly, depending on what the cost is. Of course, we don't know yet because we haven't gone through it. But reading through the comments, I just want to point out that reading through the original comments from the public consultation, there were 16 total, 3 of which were opposed or mentioned obstructions with A boards, and then you could add another 4th from the one that came in this one. But then you have another 67 replies from businesses and also members of the public who are opposed to licensing those A boards. So it seems to me that the response we've got from people, I don't want to diminish any feedback that Julie has had before, seems to be overwhelmingly against it. And I think that's not just because of the potential fee, but because of also the process of applying. I did read in there that businesses would need a £10 million public liability insurance in order to apply. Is that correct? So some businesses might not have that and would have to pay and have extra costs incurred from getting better insurance, all for the sake of an A board outside. So it seems like a bit of a burden. Am I understanding that right in relation to the insurance?
The council policy is that anyone who holds anything on council premises requires 10 million public liability. That is the recommendation from that area from the insurance company.
Thank you. So for like a small A board that's quite small, it seems that 10 million is quite excessive. And if we were to do anything that, as a licensing committee, as a licensing body, you have to have an application for a license in order to cover these A boards. So you can't really get away from the fact of having a fee and having to increase your insurance. So those, it's either don't do anything or incur those costs on businesses. Is that a fair summary?
I think that's a fair summary, but I think most of the people, a lot of the people who responded, Councillor Redruth, were keen to ensure that A boards were still placed in a safe and proper manner. And I think that's key in this conversation, is that we do go down if the committee decide to go down the route of not licensing them, there is still a key bit of work that Island Road stewards need to do to ensure that they are safe for the public to traverse past.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I have Councillor Adams, Councillor Mosdale, and then Councillor Fuller.
The conversation was about safety. As Councillor Evans stated, there was never any mention of charges and fees. I think, to me, key in this is safety. And at paragraph 49, we have the council's insurance service has confirmed that no claims have been made relating to A boards in the last 5 years. That, to me, tells us that whatever is in place is fairly stringent. And I will not be supporting anything that puts a levy on the businesses in the current economic climate. And I think pretty much everything has been said in the discussion we've had here today. I don't think there's a lot to add.
Thank you. Councillor Mosdale.
So I'm sat here listening intently, of course, that so far most of us agree that the worst culprits for the A board is probably Island Roads in the first place. And they definitely leave them up, and then when they blow over in the wind, don't come and sort them out and make themselves a trip hazard. We haven't ascertained in this that actually we could end up Island Roads having to pay £225 because it's not specific, that it's not relating to the utility companies and to Island Roads. So if this policy went to full council at the moment, I don't think we'd even be able to discuss it. Because although the fees would be going to licensing, we are then having a budgetary impact because we will be saying to Island Roads, who we contract, that we're going to give you an additional cost because we could be charging for your A roads because you're not excluded in this policy anywhere from these fees, and neither are the utility companies. Everybody's agreeing that the fee implication came from nowhere and just suddenly got added. And the most important thing, so my recommendation to this committee is we go back and strip everything out about the fees and we just concentrate what this was about, which was about safety. Because otherwise the implications of this could be huge.
Chairman, I'd probably like to just jump in there, and I'd probably ask for the lawyer's opinion on whether Island Roads and the utilities, I believe they would be exempt full stop because of the work that they would be undertaking and therefore wouldn't be applicable to any form of licensing. It would solely be the business A boards within the organised, with which are placed on the footway to promote businesses. Does that, I just wanted to see clarity there that the utilities and the road A board signage would be exempt full stop.
But in here as well, we've got lots of stuff, stuff from charities and stuff like that who'd be seriously infected, not just businesses.
The charities would be included within this.
So this, can something go to full council that has such a big financial implication of all these A boards? Can it go to full council? Because it does have a budgetary effect, doesn't it?
I'm not
Appendix.
quite sure what that answer to that question is.
Appendix
Councillor
1 is
Morsdale.
fine as it
Sorry.
is, isn't it? That's the one we
Yeah.
were discussing last time, but it's
Yeah.
obviously Councillor Jarman's asking about Island Roads and the utilities, but I agree with you. I think they'd be covered elsewhere because it's about safety, it's not about advertising. This is advertising boards, aren't they, really?
Councillor
But-
Morsdale, if you were talking about who sets the fees and charges are set by the licensing department in relation to the activities that are undertaken. They're not necessarily approved by full council, other than a full list of fees and charges that go to full council.
You do not want to know how many hours of my life I have lost in full council with people arguing that we can't discuss it because it's got a budgetary effect, and then I lose the will to live, and next time it happens, I'm going home. Just saying.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I think I'm learning the will to live either, losing the will to live. Yeah, my view is that we've gone out to consultation, we've spoken to businesses, we've spoken to residents, they've come back and they've said, no, charging for A boards particularly is not the right way to go. What worries me is the level of bureaucracy we're talking about. These businesses are suffering, they need to be supported, and I don't want to see, personally, putting an additional burden upon our small businesses in our town centres that they don't have at the moment. I think we should be supporting businesses, certainly this time, certainly at the moment where things are difficult for them. And I'm in full agreement with Councillor Morsdale.
Thank you very much. So Councillor Redrup and then Councillor Baker.
Just for clarity, so our choices between the two policies, one is, yes, we include A boards under 1.5, or no, we don't include A boards under 1.5. Is that the choice that we're being presented with?
That's the choice in short. However, you do have the ability to amend the policies if you so wish, which then could enable a further consultation to be undertaken.
So if we were to do anything that regulates any A boards under 1.5, it would probably incur a fee, probably mean that businesses would have to increase their insurance to 10 million, and would also put work on the licensing department to administer this. Is that a summary?
To answer those questions, there will need to be an administration process to license it. For the licence department to undertake that, there has to be a fee, because the legislation requires us to do so. And there will be additional work for the licensing team, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise for coming in late to the meeting. As explained, I had a session with the DFE I had to attend. We should also, as people try again. As people possibly know, I'm connected with a high street business, but I'm not going to declare any greater interest in that because it's not one that could or would ever display A boards, but it does give some insight into the Newport business arena, shall we say. A few points I'd just like to underline, which seem to be covered off in the discussion, but I very much take the position I took at the last meeting that the proposal is ridiculous. In my view, make no bones about it. I think the mention of island roads and utilities was a bit of a red herring because, as has, I think now been established, those we're talking about the warning signs, road closure, things like that. Must be something about my brain. For goodness sake. All those people out there can't. Oh,
Mine works, all right. Okay.
if it works for your voice, it should be okay. Right. So I think we went down a little bit of a blind alley there because that is a separate regime. We wouldn't be talking about those in any event. It's not a budget matter because when we talk about that in full council, it's talking about council expenditure, whereas we're talking about council income here. It is plain there would, for what Mr. Winchcombe has already said just now, it's plain that there would have to be a fee charge because that's the way licensing works. Licensing pays for itself. It's a rare part of the council, but it's fundamental to the way it operates that if it does something, it recovers the cost of that. So we know there'd be a fee, and we've heard that 150 is a low fee for a piece of work. So we're probably talking at least 200 as an application fee, but that is a guess, but it's plain there would have to be a fee. I think Councillor Adams probably nailed it when he said, if it's a safety issue, it's plain there have been no complaints. Safety is covered by another regime. That was covered off last time, I believe. So I'm with Councillor Adams on this. I just think it's a ridiculous proposal and we should bin it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Jones-Evans, you had your hand up. Did you wish to?
I just wanted to,
Make a
I just
brief
wanted
comment.
just to finish off, you know, I've explained why I raised this discussion back in our last meeting. It's an opportunity for us to speak up and do something for people that do find it difficult to maneuver around town sometimes. You know, I have had, as I won't go over it again, but also it's a way of tidying up up our towns as well. You know, part of my job, I do have to go around to various places and go to various seminars on our high streets, and you know, an A board isn't an A board is an A board. There's all different types of A board, and that's why when I was looking at Liverpool, they have a homogenised. You have to have a standard size of frame. It's out between certain times, and the democracy they charge, say, for 3 years, and it's £200, which is just over £1 a week, isn't it? I think roughly. But notwithstanding, that's obviously a huge burden for businesses. I saw this A boards as an opportunity for us to try and get our act together, do something for people that do have accessibility issues, and just try and smarten the place up. But obviously I'm going to abstain. I've got this. There's better voices around here, and I will obviously listen to them. And I will leave it at that.
I'm
Thank-
with the Binnett recommendation.
Councillor
Binnett.
Councillor Blake.
Binnett.
Thank you, Chair. I think
I don't have them at all.
I do sympathise with what Councillor Jones-Evans has come to this committee with, because there are some problem ables. I think the problem is it's something that's going to be definitely a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, and I think it may even be specifically a Newport issue and maybe a Ryde issue more than it is a Brentner and Shanklin issue, and so maybe it's something we recommend to the town councils or some form of more local base to liaise with shopkeepers or purveyors of A boards and see if they can improve maybe specific issues that A boards are creating.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. If there's no further comments from the committee, Mr. Winchcombe, did you just want to finish up or are you happy we go to?
I'm quite happy that I've probably said enough, Councillor Beston.
I'm quite happy then to go to the recommendation. The recommendation is in front of members. That the licensing committee recommends that full council approve and adopt the revised street furniture and pavement licensing policy 2025 to 2030 at Appendix 1.
So what happens if we all vote against this? Does this just die a death now?
Yes. Just want
Councillor Mosdale, the recommendation is that the A boards aren't included. The policy at Appendix 1 does not include A boards below 1.5 metres. Appendix 2 does.
Does that clarify? Yes, it does. Right, all in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Against? And abstentions? 1 abstention. Thank you. Okay. Item 7, members' question time. Are there any questions? I think we've exhausted ourselves, probably. I will close, no further questions. I will close the meeting at 16:53. Thank you very much.